So stealth transactions is generating a new key that's not tied to the parent key for the transfer. And then confidential transactions is hiding the amount of the transfer. And when you combine them, you get stealth confidential transactions. And that is the ultimate. Yes. You conceal who you're sending to while also concealing the amount that you are sending.
Welcome to this week's BitShares Dev Hangout. This recording is brought to you by the Beyond Bitcoin crew. We welcome all BitShares members to join us weekly and discuss the latest news, updates, and developments. If you'd like to participate in our next meeting, then please join us live on Mumble every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Did you know the Beyond Bitcoin show now has a registered delegate? Please consider voting if you find our Hangouts and recordings useful. The delegate name to vote for is fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. Again, that's fuzzy.beyondbitcoin. The Beyond Bitcoin crew would like to send out a big thank you to everyone who's already voted and allowing us the opportunity to serve the BitShares ecosystem and our valued community members. So once again, welcome and please enjoy the show.
Today is July 24th, 2015. The keyboard smashing you hear in the background is Bytemaster.
Sorry.
From Cryptonomex. You're good. Okay, I'm just gonna start this over. July. Okay, hold on. Sorry. We gotta get serious now. Today is July 24th. Welcome to another Beyond Bitcoin Hangout with Bytemaster and the crew from BitShares. For those who are in attendance for the first time, if you're not aware of how this whole thing works, we start out with updates from Bytemaster, and then we move on into community questions. So rather than me talk too much, I'll just say that if you have a question, feel free to ask it out loud or in the window off to the side, and I will try to plug it into the conversation. Now, if you have a question that's not on topic, I will try to fit it in where I can, but if we don't veer in that direction, your question might be skipped over just to keep continuity in the conversation. So with that said, could you get started with the update, Bytemaster?
Oh, so many things have happened in the past week. I have a hard time keeping up with it all. I'd say the most significant update is the support for blind transfers or stealth confidential transactions. Has been tested and tests are passing, and it's integrated in the master branch of Graphene.
So this is what we've been talking about in terms of being able to transfer privately.
Yes, without any link between account or amount. Still working on the wallet features for that, but that should be done by the end of today at the command line wallet level. Yeah, it won't be available in the web wallet for some time because that's requires JavaScript implementation of the blind signing algorithms, and that's a lot of work, and we've got a lot of other things to do first. I think I prefer to just field questions. And okay. We'll go from there.
Well, first off, I'll open it up to the community. Okay. So is this like the basic functionality? It's not going to be implemented with the first release, is it?
You'll be able to do blind transfers on the first release if you have a full wallet on your computer. and you do it from the command line.
So you can do it from the command line, and this is an optional feature that you don't have to use, but you can use it, correct?
Correct.
And will this cost anything extra to do this?
Yes, the transactions have slightly higher transaction fees.
Will there be the opportunity, I'm assuming there will be, to message within these transactions?
So I can describe the general theory about how these work. I'm going to operate under the assumption of stealth blind transfers. You don't have to use the stealth mode. You can choose to only blind the amounts, but not who it's between. But for the purposes of this, if you care about privacy, you probably want to go full on stealth mode. So no one knows.
Partial stealth mode.
Yes, I can transfer some unknown amount from me to you. Everyone in the world will know that I sent you some funds, and anyone in the world would know to come to one of us if they want to find out what the amount was. On the other hand, it'd be really nice if I could send money from me to you without...
Oh, just cut out.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Did he cut out for anybody else?
Yep, for me too.
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. Please continue.
Let's define some terms here to simplify the conversation. Confidential transactions is where the amount is kept secret, but the source and destination address is not. Stealth addresses are like the original Titan, where you generate a new key for every transfer. And in that case, there is no ability to see who's sending what, but you can still see the amounts.
So I'm sorry, right there, is this why you have to run a full node?
Well, yes. You can run, let me just define the terms first. Sure. Then I'll get into the... So stealth transactions is generating a new key that's not tied to the parent key for the transfer. And then confidential transactions is hiding the amount of the transfer. And when you combine them, you get stealth confidential transactions. And that is the ultimate. Yes. You conceal who you're sending to while also concealing the amount that you are sending. There is a problem with stealth confidential transactions in that it requires you to scan all transactions. And that's not scalable, particularly if we're doing 100,000 transactions per second and you want to run a light node. It just doesn't make sense. So we are making the assumption that when you're doing a stealth confidential transaction, that you will pass the metadata to the recipient through some other channel. So I'd send the transaction on the blockchain, and then through some secure channel, either in person or encrypted email or something else, I would send the person who I sent it to, hey, here's the confirmation receipt. Then you would take that receipt, you'd load that into your wallet, and your wallet would say, yep, I see that's in the blockchain. Thank you very much. That way you don't have to scan all transactions. I'm telling you exactly which one to scan, which means the memo and all the other information that we used to pass along in Titan stuff doesn't need to go on the blockchain because you already have this side channel to communicate that type of information. So we don't even include memos or even make it possible to scan the blockchain to recover stealth balances. Now, technically, you can embed that data and scan it, but that's not really the mode that most people should be operating in. It's not practical for anyone with a light wallet, and we want everyone to be using light wallets because it's just more practical when you start to scale these things.
So a user with a light wallet, let's say on a cell phone, won't necessarily be able to receive encrypted communications through the blockchain.
Sure, they can.
It would just would it be a third? Okay, I'll shut up and let you explain.
If I'm doing it on a cell phone, right? Let's say we want to do a confidential transfer from cell phone to cell phone. On the sender, I'd send it, and then it'll present me a QR code that the receiver can then scan. And when they scan the QR code, they've got the balance. So that's all that's necessary to do it from cell phone to cell phone. Alternatively, you could copy the confirmation and email it to someone.
So they would scan the barcode and they would receive the funds. But I'm saying, I guess what I'm saying is you're kind of talking about like a third party that would be used in terms of like whenever you said through an encrypted email or something like that.
Yeah, you've got to, the confirmation receipt is actually self-encrypting. So you can send it over an unencrypted channel without anyone being able to see the details.
Wow.
So you just copy and paste something. It's like a really long transaction ID base 58. So you just copy this blob of numbers and you give it to them and they copy that in, paste it into their wallet. The wallet will then check with whoever their service provider is and say, hey, does this output exist on the blockchain? Yes, it does. Thank you very much. I've got payment.
Wow. Does this open up the functionality for you to, so you could send it to me in an email? I just click it kind of like a link whenever I get anything else?
Yep. And it's possible for the wallet to one day include things like automatically emailing the person you're sending it to. But of course, email isn't confidential. So if you email someone, hey, look, then everyone knows, at least the government knows that a payment was sent between those two parties, even if they don't know what it was amount or what accounts they used. But yes.
Yeah, that's really cool. Does anybody else have any questions before I take everything? Oh, hold on here. Arhag says, wasn't the argument to get rid of Titan in BitShares 2.0 originally because it provided a false sense of privacy? I believe the argument was that the blockchain analysis allowed people to link balances to users. While blinding the amounts helps complicate blockchain analysis, doesn't it still mean sophisticated attackers can still discover the metadata of who is transacting with who? I just want people to understand this isn't some perfect privacy solution. Good question, Arhag.
Metadata about who's transacting with who is a lot harder when you can't see the amounts. You could transfer to yourself a whole bunch and no one would be able to tell the difference between that and transferring it to someone else. And without seeing the amounts, you can't sum things up and follow the money, so to speak. And if the addresses involved are new, so there's a new address with every single output, you've significantly reduced it so that an outside observer who's just looking at the blockchain transactions, they could, anytime you combine balances, yes, oh look, those things got combined. They were obviously all received by one person. That type of analysis is still there, but you don't know the value that was received by that person, and you don't know who they're sending it to. So it's really trying to hide how much you're transacting and how much money you have. And those two things are perfectly hidden in this. What's not perfectly hidden is if I send a blind transaction to you and you send a blind transaction to someone else and then they send me the money back, I can, and that's the only thing involved, then the parties involved in those three transactions, well, at least the original party, would be able to estimate, but not know for sure, the amounts that were sent between the other two. But anyone who wasn't involved in any of those transactions would have no clue whatsoever what just happened. So there's levels of privacy and who you're private from, and what we're talking about here is privacy from a third party who's completely outside any of the transaction involved. Will not be able to do anything, know anyone's balance, know who's transacting with whom. They will be able to see clustering. Oh, look, there's these balances and they all go together. Okay. But that doesn't provide you with a whole lot of information. So worst case, you sent me money and you'll know that, oh, I received 5 other payments and I sent a payment to someone else. But you don't know who I received those other payments from or what amounts they were. So you can know that I moved my funds that you sent me, but you don't know if I sent them back to myself or if I sent them to someone else. So I guess you can, there's still some leaking on the quantity of transactions you're doing whenever you combine inputs. But other than that, if you never combine inputs, then you're not leaking anything.
Is there a place that you could see for mixing services on top of this? Or do you think that's kind of overkill to a degree where it won't be profitable?
Mixing services on top of this would help solve the 3 parties problem, where one of the parties can kind of guess what the other 2 parties did because they were all transacting together. So it does add another layer of protection, but I think it's an unnecessary layer. No one is going to be able to look at this and tell your balance.
Wow.
So
they can't tell if I'm a huge whale in BitShares.
Correct.
Which makes it harder for them to find a target.
You don't know who the whales are. It makes it harder to tax. There's all kinds of things you can do. You don't have to worry about the IRS revealing, the blockchain revealing to the IRS you received X amount. Now we're going to go tax you for it. So there's a lot of benefits associated with it. If you're a business, you're not revealing your sales numbers to everyone you do business with.
Lois Lerner will probably like this. But anyway, go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
How does this relate to when graphene is first put out there? All the balances and all that information is going to be public. Is that correct, or is there going to be some way to obscure? Because at the get-go, if all that information is public, it's on the blockchain and transparent, then the whales at that point could be identified, correct?
Well, we can't de-anonymize any balances that are currently anonymous. The information that's on the blockchain now is, we're not going to be able to come up with information that doesn't exist. When you import an account, however, and claim all your balances, if you don't claim it into a new account, it will tie your balances to your account. So it is possible that if you're not careful, you could end up linking a lot of that information together. So,
which comes back to the individual user.
Yeah, so we don't actually have good tools at this point in time for maintaining your privacy on import. So, I'll look at ways of importing to a private balance, to a blinded balance.
Yeah, a good piece of documentation just to provide the information we would need to do this properly, so that if you did have private balances you want to maintain, that there would be a methodology that you can follow to do that.
Yes, the way you'd probably do it is you'd import all your balances into a special account on the blockchain called the temp account, which has no authority required. Anyone can do anything with it, but its balance should always be 0. So you import all your balances into that account and simultaneously transfer from that account to a blinded balance. You'd be, and if you did that one balance at a time, then or a couple balances at a time, you'd probably be pretty good at maintaining your privacy when you import.
How do you transfer into this this intermediate temporary account without it being open to attack by somebody that's monitoring that account to take stuff out as soon as you put it in there before you can take it out?
You transfer in and out in the same transaction. You can't leave money in that account.
I see. So it's a kind of a two-legged transaction. It's one considered one, but there's two atomic elements to it.
Yeah, well, yeah, a transaction is a group of operations that happen atomically. So you import into it, and then you blind transfer out, and you do that all in a single transaction. So before and after the transaction, the balance is zero. Your funds are never at risk.
And so that doesn't this interesting kind of transaction that has in and out in one operation is now something that would compromise an identity or even an address, I guess, eh?
All the
in other words, you can't just look at that one transaction, this dual-legged transaction, and kind of see what's going on in terms of the where things are coming from and where they're going to. That's prohibited by going through this unusual type of using this unusual type of transaction.
You'd be able to see that these end balances from BitShares 1 got merged together and sent to a blinded balance or a two blinded balance. You probably want to send it to at least two, so you don't know how much each blinded balance has, and then you're good. You know that those two were owned by the same person, and you know what they total to, but you wouldn't know their individual amounts for when you get to pay people in the future.
Have you talked to Meta Exchange or any of the other comparable services that are being run by BitShares community members about utilizing this?
I know this feature is so new that the wallet support's not even there yet. So I'll talk to them once we figure that all out. So
yeah,
someone
I see this big.
raised the question. There's two questions that have been asked. One is, what assets can this be used? It can be used with any asset that hasn't prohibited it. So the asset issuer can prohibit confidential transactions, but by default you can use it with core and everything else. And the side effect of using this is that there is no voting on your confidential balances. So BTS stakeholders have to choose between network security and privacy, but that's not even an issue. If you use confidential balances to move your funds from one pseudonymous account to another pseudonymous account without linking it, and you can vote when you reveal the balances in a pseudonymous account, which is still private. People say, oh, there's this amount somewhere. We don't know who owns it. Yeah, all the funds coming into it were from a blinded source, and everything coming out of it goes to a blinded source. So it's just an island of transparency that you can have the funds sitting to vote. But and that's what I'd recommend anyone who's has a lot of funds they want to keep blinded, is to divide it up into several accounts and vote. Now, your votes tie things together, but maybe you just point them all to the same proxy node that you trust, and then that's not really revealing too much because there's presumably a lot of people that are voting with the same proxy. So that's how that all works.
Ken Code's asking, is there a formal definition URL of these stealth transactions posted somewhere that I can show a wealth management client of ours?
There's no formal documentation on this at this point in time. Well, if you need information about it, contact me or post questions on the forum, and we'll get you the information you need.
And if anybody's listening, how do they contact you on the forums?
My username is Bytemaster on BitSharesTalk.org.
And that's all lowercase and no 420 after it.
Exactly.
Yeah, just so everybody knows. And Cronus is asking, you mentioned that the sender requires a full node, not the receiver.
Both sender and receiver require a node running C++ code at this point in time. So that means a native app of some kind. It might be a light node, but it requires a app, not a web browser.
Okay.
I'm actually looking at an intermediary approach that if you trust a server, the server can do all your blinded calculations for you, which means that the server would know the balance, but the rest of the world wouldn't. And if the server is an honest server running standard code, it wouldn't keep any records. It'd all stay in RAM, and all the amounts would be encrypted to and from. You'd be perfectly private. So we're looking at providing utilities on the API as a way of allowing this to migrate into hosted web wallets for a small degradation of privacy, not huge.
What exactly do you mean by a small degradation? Isn't privacy kind of all or nothing proposition almost? I mean, I guess that's not really fair to say, but what did you mean by that exactly, Bytemaster?
You're increasing the circle of trust. You know it, the receiver knows it, and anyone you tell would know, but no one outside of people you tell would know. So if you ask a server to do some calculations for you, the server has the potential to know. But if the server's a trustworthy server, then it'll keep everything encrypted in memory and not keep any logs, and it won't use that information against you. So if it's a standard server, then you're probably perfectly safe, allowing them to be in your circle of trust. From the outside world's perspective, you're still perfectly private.
You see, I've listened to this and I think how amazing it is. The one thing that comes to mind for me from the experience of this entire 2 years is how long will it take for it to be extremely user-friendly? You know what I mean? Like, when are the tools going to be out? And I'm sure this is more of a third-party solution. Whenever some of these people come on board throughout the summer, as you guys have been saying is going to happen, do you foresee them building these tools?
Yes. Once we have the referral program in place, the money is going to go to whoever can make things as easy as possible.
It's a really good point. And this is a question that I have to ask because people will be interested. The brownies, are they going to be given this power?
No, brownies will not be allowed to be confidential, because the purpose is so that I can know the balances for whatever use I might need the balances for. So, and that's something else you should consider when you're using blinded transfers and confidential. You can't be share dropped on. So if you keep your BTS blinded balance and a share drop comes along, you're SOL.
So there would be, and this is for those who aren't familiar with the concept of share dropping and all that, or rather the history of share dropping. But back in the day, we had kind of a consensus that you would give 2 weeks to a month advance notice for snapshots, which are what is taken.
Actually, I take that back. You can be share dropped on. It just has to be a stealth share drop.
Oh, wow. So it would have to be the same kind of token, basically.
Yes. The share drop target would be, you wouldn't be able to scale the amounts. So it would get very interesting.
That will get very interesting. So do I get this right then? If I create stealth brownies, I can't share drop on brownies.
No, I'm saying when you do the share drop target, you'd have to share drop all the blinded amounts as well, and then allow people to claim those blinded amounts.
So this would lend itself more to a share drop on the actual accounts, which wouldn't be able to increase. Like, for instance, in the current system, if somebody has 1 million BitShares, they will get a little bit more, most likely, in terms of a share drop from another chain.
All I'm saying, I made a statement that you couldn't share drop on blinded balances. All I'm saying now is it's difficult, but possible. I was just slightly clarifying my statement. I'd like to address something that came up on the forum this week about Vitalik countering with 115,000 transactions per second.
Before we move on to that, could I finish up with one last question about the privacy issue?
Sure.
And that is, what is your motivation for completing these privacy tasks at this point in time? I thought initially you were saying that you were actually putting forth a proposing a worker proposal for doing this after the fact, so we wouldn't have a rollout time. And now you've put a substantial amount of work to work this out, and I guess there's probably a little more to finish up the edges as well.
I really wanted this particular feature.
And I'm grateful that you did. I'm very grateful. But I'm just curious for the audience why you chose to do this, and which seems to be different than what you were initially saying.
I chose to do it because I ended up having time to do it on the back end. The overall, the main thing that's holding us up from releasing right now is the web development on the user interface. So that's why I'm adding a few extra things to the protocol level, because I've got the time to put it in the protocol level. I really want these features. I think that not having it was a major detractor to BitShares. We have all this other great stuff, but we had the worst privacy of any chain. Now I think we'll be able to say that we've got the best privacy of any chain.
Amen.
Glad to see that's been worked out better.
Yeah, that's a sigh of relief, man. Just so everybody knows, before we close off this topic, there is a thread that Bytemaster posted to bitsharestalk.org, so feel free to go register to the forums and ask any questions, or we can continue the conversation over there. Now, Bytemaster, I'm curious to hear what you were going to say about the 115,000 transactions per second.
I'll try to say this cleanly. Vitalik's saying that they could theoretically do 115,000 transactions per second is a theoretical assumption based upon implementing complex algorithms for dividing up the transaction workload among multiple nodes, so that not all nodes have to process all transactions. Right?
Sure.
All his white papers on the subject involve dividing up the work among multiple nodes. What we have done in our numbers are the amount that can be processed by a single node. And not theoretically. The numbers we published are actual benchmark results based on average computers today. Not only that, the published number, 100,000 transactions per second, is scaled down from our actual benchmark result of 180,000 transactions per second, which itself was based upon average hardware and not high-end hardware. So with high-end hardware, we could easily do over 200,000 per second, and that's before we have done any optimizations whatsoever to the performance. And those optimizations can easily double or triple the throughput once we eliminate the bottlenecks that we have left by better memory management and memory allocation strategies. There's lots of little things that we can do to improve performance above and beyond that. So I would say that if you're going to compare apples to apples, you'd have to compare theoretically how much can each of our systems do in a single thread. So in a single thread, I believe we can get to 500,000 transactions per second, maybe 1 million transactions per second, once we have all the optimizations in place, leaving the network bandwidth to be the primary motivator for not scaling that high. So that's on a single thread. Currently,
do you think
Ethereum,
that they'll be announcing that there's 300,000 TPS?
Well, those high numbers are kind of moot until you actually have demand from users generating that kind of transaction volume. If you do the math and you say, well, what are the fees times the transaction rate? How many billions of dollars of profit per day is the network making? It gets rather insane when you start talking very high transaction rates. So those type of things aren't going to happen until you're way out there. So what we're saying is that BitShares has enough capacity with today's technology and today's software to scale to anything that the market's likely to throw at it in the next 5 years, and that we'll be able to keep up with the rate of growth, probably just with the hardware improving naturally. Meanwhile, architectures like Ethereum and their current software, the most they've been able to push through their network, according to a post I saw on Reddit, is 40 transactions per second. And so if you're going to do apples to apples comparison of most that they push through a test network compared to the most that we've pushed through a test network at this point in time, it would be 40 versus 500. And we were pushing 500 through the test network with barely any resource usage whatsoever. And we were limited by the wallet. So that's the point. The other thing to consider is that all the strategies that Vitalik has mentioned for scaling their system up can also be applied to scale our system up. It just times a large constant factor because we can do more per thread than they can per thread. And that gives us a huge advantage. Lastly, most of the techniques that Vitalik used to scale up depend upon the transactions being largely independent from each other, meaning account A going to account B is independent from account C going to account D. There's no dependencies there, so they can be processed in parallel. But as soon as you create a smart contract that has all transactions going through a market where they all depend upon each other, now you've got a maximum throughput issue on that one smart contract, which is still inherently single-threaded. There's no way to do that in parallel, and so that becomes a bottleneck. It's a unmentioned bottleneck because they're talking about theoretical maximum parallel throughput. But as everyone knows from computers, if I have 1,000 CPUs in my computer, it's not going to make my text editor or my compiling any faster if I only have a single object file I'm compiling.
Sure.
You're limited based upon the performance per core when you're compiling things like C++. It's the same way with smart contracts and the transaction throughput. So yes, you might be able to have 1 million contracts each doing 1 transaction per second, but you can't have one contract doing 1 million transactions per second. That's the type of difference. And understanding these performance considerations is very nuanced. And people like to have bragging rights. So I don't know why the 115,000 number was thrown out there, but it's clearly comparing theoretical versus scaled down actual numbers.
Yeah, I found it interesting that it came out almost right on the heels of the 100,000 transactions per second announcement from you guys. I will say that I want to just read off something that Kronos said, which was very interesting to me. And I didn't want to interrupt you, but he was saying that at present, Bitcoin just reached 1 transaction per second. And I did not know that. And that's the largest chain right now, right? So we're looking at scalability. Now, the question is, do you see any use cases for something like Ethereum? Or do you think that there's really no reason to go that route? I know it's a hard question.
There's lots of use cases for something like Ethereum. It's great prototyping environment for new smart contracts that have low volume and they can't justify entire chain dedicated to the purpose. So there's...
But really, sorry for interrupting, but that could really still be done through BitShares, right?
Yes, we could still add smart contracts to BitShares.
So that could be, okay. Sorry, I'm just curious because the one thing I've learned, another thing I've learned throughout this entire process is that ultimately the technology and the protocols and how everything's accomplished from an engineering standpoint is extremely important, right? And that's why you guys have been building this for scalability from the very beginning. So to see this stuff,
I'd like to address the scalability thing because there's some chat stuff going on right now. Kronos said that the actual traffic on Bitcoin averages 1.3 transactions per second currently. And that is true. When you're just talking about payment transfers, that's about all the more you need. But when you start trying to do something like an exchange, how many transactions per second do you think are going on all the Bitcoin exchanges right now?
That's a good point. So if they were all using their ledgers connected up to BitShares, this could support it.
Yes.
Oh my God. I never really thought of it from that angle.
Wow.
Moment of silence, right?
So when people say, oh, look, Bitcoin only needs 1 transaction per second, you know, Ethereum clearly doesn't need anything more than 10 or 20 per second. Well, if all you're doing is transfers and coins and custom little onesie-twosie smart contracts, maybe. But if you're trying to have a market or many markets all executing at the same time, you know, there are going to be bots that are doing transactions every couple of seconds just to take advantage of arbitrage opportunities.
There's going to be
many of those bots, and they're going to add up. And then, you know, how many times per day do you need to pay someone versus how many times per day are traders speculating and rebalancing their portfolio? So I think there's a huge difference in magnitude. And there are other applications that are going to have even higher transaction throughput than exchanges. So it'd be very interesting to see where it all plays out. But making sure that we keep track of apples for apples comparisons between actual versus theoretical and transaction rates in different use cases and independent transactions versus dependent transactions. That whole area needs to be carefully understood when you're doing comparisons, or you're going to get false comparisons and bogus claims and just headline numbers that are good for marketing but don't actually mean anything in real life.
Roadscape's interested if there are any updates regarding the faucet's registration and merchant interface.
Yes, we do have some updates regarding merchant interfaces. We've implemented a new merchant protocol that allows a merchant to specify basically a shopping cart. Here's an invoice with various line items, quantities, prices, and the user can click on that link and it'll take them to their wallet with everything filled out, ask them to confirm the payment. When they confirm the payment, the transactions broadcast to the network user is redirected back to the merchant. So a merchant provider can just select which wallet servers, which wallet that's out there, CCEDK, banks, data security node, which ones of those they want to support for merchant integration. And it's as easy as just enumerating the URLs because they're all using the exact same protocol. And the protocol does so while keeping your invoice private from the hosted wallet, as long as you trust the hosted wallet not to use JavaScript to fetch it and funnel it back to them. But if you're running your own, there's nothing that prevents you from entering your own wallet provider and then saying, yeah, I'd like to pay with, and enter your wallet provider name. So very excited about that. We are actively working on a demonstration of merchant integration. So that's very exciting news.
Well, this actually brings me to, this is a really good segue into, I know we've talked about it in the past, but a forum member just posted a thread regarding the BTS 2.0 partnership program and how does it work. He says the referral program is described here, but it is not quite clear to me. I cannot find any similar documentation becoming a BTS2 partner like CCEDK or banks. The question that isn't crossed out here, do I need to sign a deal with CNX and pay anything to become a BTS partner like CCEDK or banks? So could you answer that question for anybody else who hasn't listened to the past Hangouts where we've covered that? Just really quickly.
Sure. If you want to provide hosted services for other users to come to a server and access a wallet and or a faucet for signing up, that software is licensed by us on a individual by individual basis, and our general policy is to license it on a revenue sharing model, where if you want to host a wallet for users, you run the software and you pay us a percentage of whatever referral income you get. That is for people like CCEDK or banks. CCEDK and banks can in turn have an affiliate program where users can refer people to their respective websites, and they will mark them as the referrer in the blockchain, with CCEDK being the registrar. And we're sort of on a trust relationship with CCEDK and banks. They receive the funds, they pay us. We can see in the blockchain how much they're getting, and so on and so forth, but the blockchain will keep track of it for the individual users. So you've got affiliates for the individual wallets, and the wallets license the infrastructure, the back end that's doing the faucet automated registration stuff. If you're just a user and you just want to use the software for personal use, you can set up and use the web interface on your own without any restriction. The only thing that we're licensing is all the back-end infrastructure associated with hosting a secure wallet service.
Thank you. I just feel like it's kind of important to cover it occasionally, because these things, not everybody's seen them or heard about it.
Yeah. Well, I'm also working on a means of making it easy for individuals to sign up other individuals without being an affiliate going to a wallet provider. If you pay the transaction fee and you are the registrar, you can claim 100% of everything. We're going to make it possible for you to do that without going through a wallet provider. But that's going to likely require users to be running native clients. Because if they're not running native clients, then they visit a wallet provider, they sign up, they create their account's already registered. They don't need you. and that's probably just easier for them. But we want this software to scale so that it can be used out centralized hosted wallet providers as well.
Does that answer your question, Favdisu? Okay, so we've got that one crossed off the list. Does anybody have anything that we haven't already talked about? Looks like we're pretty much good on most of the questions. I would like to, since we have 10 minutes, would it be okay if I go to the forum thread to just grab a couple from there?
No.
Oh, okay, well.
Go ahead.
It's over, guys. I'm joking. You really think I'm that easy? Come on now.
Quick question. Do you think we'll have a public test net maybe next week?
I sure hope so. We're running test nets constantly right now. So at any time, we could say this one's public and just tell everyone connect up. So it's really just a matter of us weighing the pros and cons of supporting a public test net versus keeping it private right now. But I'll talk with the guys today about making it public. I know just yesterday, Valentin was working on deploying a user interface for the public and getting DNS set up so that there can be a public hosted wallet that people could play around with. And I know that we've worked out most of the details associated with exporting your balances from your BitShares account and then importing them into a test network. But I'll see what we can do. Maybe we can get everyone on a test network today or early next week.
Awesome.
Okay, so I'm just going to forward this by saying Jacob is on a roll here on the forums. So he asked 3 different questions. I'm going to try to get 1 or maybe 2 of them in, Bytemaster. So with that said, he says, I have a question regarding BTS 2.0 licensing after September 8th. Let's assume that after September 8th, 2.0 is released and I want to launch a decentralized exchange in the BTS ecosystem and host my customers' BTS wallets on my server. Can I safely assume that all the software infrastructure will be there for me to grab free of charge and I won't need to write a single line of code? Obviously, no. Except... No. Okay. Will the BTS... Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, the code's going to be there, but we don't have anything that keeps the wallets on the server. And we're not going to keep any wallets on the server in anything that we produce, at least initially. So, well, when it comes out, we won't even have the software that does what he just described. And secondly, anything that's server side is stuff that we are licensing separately from the actual blockchain interface stuff. So the blockchain, the user interface for a wallet, if you want to host it yourself or build your own wallet using it, you can do all that. But if you're providing a service to other people and you're using our code, you're going to have to license it from us individually. And that's just server front-end stuff. You know, if you're building a business around that type of thing, we want a cut of it. That's basically what we're saying there. But the actual back end, you can run a full node and you can do all that without any restrictions. It's open source for BitShares. So anyone could create this infrastructure and integrate without paying us a dime. But being able to do it without writing a single line of code, no. You're going to have to, if you're going to build a business, you either pay us a percentage of your registration fees or you write some code.
So this can be a service that Cryptonomex would help with.
Yes, we'd be more than happy to help build custom solutions, and that's more or less what we're in the business of doing. If you have a business and you'd like to do something like have it stored on the server, then you can contact us, hire us to build it, and then you can use it. So that's one mode of operation.
Okay, well, there was one more thing that he brought up that I really think is something that I'd like to get out there. He links to an opportunity. Swift Institute wants to pay BTS 15,000 euros. This is not necessarily that they want to pay BTS, but they're seeking people to translate assets markets to the blockchain, and will pay $15,000 for it, is what he's saying. Have you guys been in contact with them? Does anybody need to get in contact with them for you, or is this something that you are not interested in? Could you give us an idea?
I'd be interested in that, yes. Send me the link in a PM on the forum, or post it in this Mumble session. Probably both. I'd be interested in looking into it, but I could actually use, that'd be a good opportunity for someone who's familiar with BTS. If all they want to do is issue assets, to look into 15,000 euros, $20,000 or so. And that doesn't do a whole lot of development. But if all they're looking for is consulting on getting something done, yeah, that's something we'd love to talk to them about.
Well, it would be worth it just to open the conversation. I wanted to, first off, thank everybody, but I wanted to ask you, Bytemaster, if you would be interested in starting to have like a weekly talking about one other project in the BitShares environment that is interesting to you, or has done something that is, or made changes that interest you.
You're talking about in the cryptocurrency industry, or?
No, I mean within the BitShares ecosystem. If there are projects that you're watching move forward that you're very interested in, or that you're happy to see gaining traction, anything that you think is being overlooked that people should be looking at more. I'd just like to kind of pick your brain about these types of projects that you think are going to be valuable that the community needs to look at. CCEDK has been one, but what would be another one this week?
That's a very good question. There's so much going on, I can't even keep up with it all. And I'd hate to name any particular project without having a chance to review them all. So there's just so much going on.
Sure.
The latest NullStreet Newsletter is 50-some pages. And
yeah,
there is a lot of stuff in there. And I'll be honest, I haven't read most of it. So,
well, that's a good topic, though, actually, because this was the last NullStreet Newsletter before DPoS Hub. So just so everybody knows, Cryptoprometheus and Data Security Node are working on DPoS Hub, and the NullStreet Newsletter, like Bytemaster said, was 50 pages long. It's a lot of content. And this is what the delegates are putting in there. So when you really sit and think about it, how many delegates do we have being paid? And that's an average of over a page for each of them to give project updates on what they're working on. So anybody can go and look at just this is the stuff that gets me interested in what we're doing, because you see all these people who believe in the project enough to, BTS isn't extremely high, none of the cryptocurrencies are high other than maybe Bitcoin, and that's probably nowhere near what cryptocurrencies are going to see. But you still have people who believe in the project so much that they're doing all this work and they're putting all that effort into it. So people can go out and read the last NullStreet Newsletter, and that's a very good project that I guess we can say for the historical purposes. But you were amazing.
I would like to say that I was sad when I read that it was going to be the final one. I think having a document of that quality come out on a quarterly basis is of huge value. DPoS Hub is not going to be a substitute for something that I can get an update periodically that just gives it all to me in one go. And if it is 50 pages, the fact that it's 50 pages gives me a lot of confidence and faith in our community.
Yeah.
You can start to, I talk with the same 20 people, and it's easy to lose sight of the fact that the BitShares community is much, much larger than we sometimes feel like it is, on the forum or so on. We've had 2,000 people subscribe to be notified of BitShares 2.0 in the past 2 months. That's twice as many as in the entire year before that we had subscribed. That's a lot of people that are interested in BitShares, and they're still coming in at about 15 or so every single day, or coming on board and expressing a huge amount of interest. Our GitHub repos are being watched by a lot of people, and that's very exciting. So there's something else I was going to say there, but it slipped my mind.
You mind if I jump in here, Bytemaster, real quick?
No, Crypto, you're not allowed talking about DPoS Hub or NullStreet. Not after all the work you've done. I had to pull a Bytemaster. Go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. It's like still early in the morning for me. Yeah, I've been talking with Cass about this. Because Cass is also kind of the same mind, and Bytemaster, I do agree that having a publication like NullStreet Journal, or just a quarterly or yearly publication, DPoS Hub is not really a substitute for that, because there's a lot of different things that you can do style-wise that it's not going to be the same as what DPoS Hub is. So Cass and I are considering that, and I had to put it aside for a few months because with DPoS Hub coming up here, I'm going to be spending all of my time on that, and I think I tried to word it in the email announcement that this was the final issue of the NullStreet Journal in its current format, I think was exactly how I described it. So I left that open to a sort of to be continued.
Yeah, it didn't come across that way when I skimmed it. So
okay.
Yeah, technically you might be right, but I think a lot of readers probably said, oh, you're not going to do this anymore.
Well, I think there's a concept of under promise and over deliver too, which I try to keep in mind when I'm doing things. Right, exactly.
So you're saying it's not off the table. It's just you are not sure if DPoS Hub, Delegated Proof of Stake Hub, DPoS Hub will be a complete replacement, and there might be a NullStreet.
Yeah, I'm not unsure about that. I'm sure. And again, Bytemaster just mentioned that, and I'm definitely in agreement with that. The idea and the hope with DPoS Hub, since everyone will be able to log in and kind of directly interact with that, is that it will be a sort of database, as it were, to draw from, so that not only the NullStreet newsletter, but other independent journalists or people who are of the mind to collect information and compile it into a nifty little package and market it or send it to an email list and call it something, create their own newsletter, in other words, will be able to do that because all of the information will be aggregated and easily accessible through DPoS Hub. So that's sort of the goal, is that Cass and I, and again, this is I don't know yet. We've just really just kind of haven't discussed this in very much detail at all, but there's the possibility, just for example, that we might consider an actual professional type publication where we have, columns and perhaps some advertisements. And Cass even mentioned, let's maybe we could end up having a print edition, and someday you could see it in your doctor's office or something. So these are things.
Thinking, actually, I mean, you could open it up and have it where you could even have a section on DPoS Hub where NullStreet stays alive, like just a tab.
Yeah, we thought about that too.
And then they submit it from there. Then you just compile it, put it into a hardcover copy, and you could advertise it right there. And for the people who want to buy it just for memory's sake, so they can have a stack of them to show them everybody. Look at thousands and thousands of pages of delegate updates from back in the day in BitShares.
Totally. I think that the original purpose of DPoS Hub was born of this notion that, every month I'm going through and spending all of this sort of manual man hours, manually collecting this data. And there should be an interface where people can just do the majority of that work themselves, and then the editing and whatnot, and the compilation and the little introduction I write or whatever, is part of could have been a lot easier. And so I think it's this idea has grown, and we've added on a whole bunch of new really exciting things to it. But ultimately at the core, it's still going to make things a lot easier to do things like the NullStreet Journal, or like I mentioned, for other people to create their own, BitShares news publication, what have you, and perhaps DPoS Hub might be just one of the places where they source their information, but it'll still be a valuable tool in that way.
Well, I know it'll be a valuable tool for anybody for me, if I'm wanting to do hangouts with people who are doing cool things. And I'm sure people who post, who have their own blogs and who we're going to be trying to aggregate content from, are going to be interested in it too. It's going to be awesome, man.
Yep. Yeah, we're really excited about it. We've still got probably another week or two before we start making any official announcements. So I'm not going to ramble too much more here about it, but thanks.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to cut out myself. So thank you, Fuzzy, for putting on this session, and everyone who shows up today. You have brownie points coming to you. If you did not receive your brownie points, please talk to
me.
Yeah, Fuzzy. I'm leaving it to you to dish them out. I think it's really good to have everyone show up and be involved in person. It seems like there's a lot of people here today. I haven't done the actual count, but maybe Fuzzy knows a quick way of getting it.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up another thread, and I'm wanting everybody to go to that thread. There's a thread that I have currently open, where I want you to give me all the information necessary for my Excel spreadsheet in the order that I need it in. And I'm going to post another one. I think it'd be really good
to prevent people from having to do this every single week. Put it in your profile. If you use the same handle on Mumble as you do in the forum, and your address is in your profile, then it's really easy for us to automate it and get it. We don't have to get addresses from everyone. So let's try to make things more efficient here. We're not generating a lot of work.
I have a feeling that the problem in automation is in getting it from the Mumble session server. And I know Joey has worked on scripts for these types of things in the past, but I think that's where the bottleneck is. Is that right, Fuzzy?
At present it is. He's kind of AFK for the moment. Well, just so you guys all know, Bytemaster was doing this, and I didn't know about being asked to do it until that day. So we're working on moving forward with it. I said yes. I didn't say yes in 2 weeks or yes in 3 weeks, because I wanted to start working on it. I guess this is a good time to say we're working on making it, and it's going to be an iterative process. But Joey is AFK at the moment. If anybody wants to volunteer their time, they're more than welcome to do so. And I don't know, Bytemaster, would you give them some brownie points to help out with the automation of it?
Sure. Anybody
All right.
who's doing anything more valuable than showing up certainly gets to get extra brownie points. Fuzzy, I'll let you go ahead and try to gauge it. But if you spend an hour of effort either just listening to this mobile session or doing something to help, it needs to be rewarded, and I want to give these out. So please reward everyone who's doing anything to help you, Fuzzy, to make this thing possible. So if you need more brownie points to hand out, contact me and I'll make sure you get them.
Well, I will definitely appreciate that, and I'll definitely go about it in a way where I can be the middleman and kind of get you in contact with the people, because I don't want to just distribute it like it's nothing. So with that said, if anybody's interested in that, but for the time being, until that happens, I'm going to have a separate thread after every mumble where I would like everybody to go and actually say, you know, I was here. And it'll be posted, like literally I'm going to post it right now. The only reason I need it in the other thread in terms of the different account names for my Excel spreadsheet for the time being is so I can populate that Excel spreadsheet, and then I can direct payments once, just without having, you don't have to give that information every time.